You're not from this town.
You're right. Well, I'm a nomad right now. So. And Gary, like when we first met, I attended, actually I think Tommy Anderson invited me to come to one of the Zoom meetings at the beginning of the pandemic, and that's when I was reaching out to a lot of the different publishing and writing groups and offering to teach workshops for free, because I said I don't want these groups to lose their membership just because we can't meet in person. So it's exciting to see that you guys have forged through and keep going. So.
Forged through, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so today what we're going to talk a little bit about is we're going to talk about the trifecta, and then we're going to talk about the sticky note method. These are two methods that I have actually developed myself and are very, very helpful for writers during the writing process. And the handout that you're going to get, it's like a little guidebook. It actually doesn't even, it mentions these two methods, but it doesn't go into a lot of instruction. So that will actually be a supplemental piece to what we're doing today. So hopefully that will be very helpful for all of you. So first of all, I'd like to ask, who is currently writing? Are you currently writing a book?
Well, I'm not a book, I'm reading stories and articles.
Okay, great. Yes?
I'm not currently writing right now, but I have 22 published books.
That's awesome. That's such a phenomenal feat, I just have to say.
I have chapter 1 of.
Okay. And are these fiction or are they nonfiction?
Historical fiction.
Historical fiction?
Both.
Both?
I write in 4 different genres.
If you make it too loud, it's going to
Yep.
give feedback.
I write in suspense novels, action novels. I write, I'm a private investigator, and I wrote a 1,100-page book. It's in universities all around the country that teach investigation.
He's a very good writer.
Yeah. He's almost famous.
Almost. And I have 2, I guess it's suspense books.
Okay, great. Yeah, so the first thing that we're going to talk about today is what I call the trifecta, okay? Now, this allows you you can use it for either fiction or nonfiction. I'm going to use the example of nonfiction, but we're also going to be able to kind of translate that over into fiction so that you guys can see how that works. This is a method that allows you to kind of break things down and look at it big picture, so that when you're doing the writing, you've got some focus on that kind of thing. And the next step is going to be the sticky note method, and I think you guys will really like that. That's one of my favorites. So you can actually, I'm going to try this slightly. Maybe I just use my hand. Okay. You can draw this yourself, or you guys can take a picture of this, whatever you want. So I don't really mind either way. So we start with a triangle. Almost perfect. All right, at the top of the triangle, this is what we call your story. Okay. Over here, this is your brand. And that this is a fiction book, that's really like what type of name are you trying to make for yourself? Like, are you doing murder mysteries? Are you doing romance? So that's going to be kind of your brand. If it's a nonfiction book, then your brand is really, what's your business? Why are you writing to support your nonfiction or your business? And then over here, the last one is your community. Okay, your community is really, who do you serve? What types of people do you serve? Obviously, people in this room are all serving veterans, many times law enforcement, first responders, that type of thing. So you have to think about who is your community, who are you writing for, who do you serve, okay? And then in the center, all of this is going to match up with your cause. So your cause may be something like mental health for men. It may be suicide prevention. It may be driving awareness around PTSD. Those are all some of your causes that you can identify and make that be part of your book, okay? So this is the trifecta. And the reason that I like this is because it makes it very, very simple. So when you start identifying these things and matching that up with your cause, it gives you a very clear roadmap on how to write your book, right? And even if you've already written, you can come back and look at this and say, okay, do I have all these elements in place? Okay. So the next thing we're gonna do, now that we have our little diagram here of the trifecta, is we're gonna actually look at what are those elements. And I would love to use somebody who's writing as an example for us to use today, because it helps when you have tangible things instead of me just pulling things out of the air. So does anybody have a book that you want to use as an example that we can use this for?
Does it have to be a book?
No. It could be a book, it could be an article, it could be,
We got an article.
yeah? Okay, let's do it. So with your article, what are some of the elements of your story?
Conspiracy.
Okay, what else?
Truth. Power. And citizenship.
I think that sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
I thought so.
Mm-hmm, yeah, that's a rabbit hole, right? Okay, so let's talk about your brand. What are you, and now is this fiction or nonfiction?
That's fiction. No, nonfiction.
It's nonfiction, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put that up here in the corner, nonfiction,
Expose.
okay. All right, bringing truth to the masses, right?
Mhm.
Okay. I already like it, by the way.
I hope
So-
other people.
Yeah. All right, so nonfiction. So these are the points about your story. And you can go on and develop more and more of these. We're gonna talk a little bit more about these elements, break them down even further when we go into the sticky note method. It's gonna really help making sure that you've got all the pieces in your story or in your article or your book that you wanna make sure that you hit on. Because that's real easy when you're developing. Sometimes people think that you have to just write an outline, and sometimes what happens is that gets us into linear thinking, like what happened first, second, third, A, B, C, right? The problem is that sometimes it might be the third topic or it might be the fifth topic. You might get stuck. And when you get stuck and you're in linear thinking, it's hard to get unstuck and release those blocks. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about that in the sticky note method, because that will help you get unstuck, okay? So let's talk about your brand. By writing this article, what is it that you are trying to brand yourself, or what are you representing?
I'm representing honor.
Okay. Honor?
And government. And undercover.
Sounds interesting.
And hoodwinked.
Hoodwinked. Some of these actually may be under your story,
Okay.
but that's okay, we're gonna put them down. So if you were to, think of it this way, if you were to develop a business around the things that you're writing, what would that business be about?
Truth, justice, and the American way.
There you go.
All right, Superman.
That's what I wanted.
Nice coined phrase.
Trademark.
Why try and reinvent the wheel?
Okay, so this, you see how this really is your brand?
Yeah.
And these things over here, they actually, they go over here to
All right.
your story. But does that help clarify? Now you're seeing, okay, great, all these things are all part of your story, but this is truly your brand. It's just like, for example, when everybody sees the pineapple,
Yes.
they know that's me, that they know that that's Finish the Book Publishing, because your brand is very powerful. So when you're thinking about your brand, you want to make sure that everything that you're writing about is going to identify that brand for the reader, okay? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Questions so far?
My brand is always wearing hats and Converse.
There you go. So if you had a logo for a business, it should be like literally a Converse,
Which is
Although-
a sneaker.
copyright issues. But
Just a
yeah,
shoe with a hat on
a
it.
shoe and a hat, exactly. I hope you guys all watched the game tonight too. Go Padres.
Right.
Yeah,
Is it
so
still baseball?
when you have the brand, it's very, very powerful, because that's like saying, that's what I stand for, right? That's what my brand is all about. Now, let's talk about your community. I'm gonna switch colors here. Who is your community? Who are you writing this for?
My mom and dad,
Okay, so family,
and they're not here anymore.
okay? So it's really family legacy,
Yeah.
right?
Posterity.
What else?
Friendship.
Would you say veterans?
No, they're not veterans.
But would someone who's reading your book, do you consider yourself to be part of the veteran community?
Yes.
Okay, and that's part of your community.
Now, would your target audience be considered people in your community? Because, like, for example, if I'm a veteran, but I'm trying to tell a story that, veterans already know,
Yeah.
this is for civilians to read, would that still be
Exactly.
considered
Yeah,
part of the community?
Yeah, it's for civilians, but his community is also veterans. So
Okay.
he's gonna have support from that community. So not only is he writing it for family, legacy, and friendship, but his community also involves veterans.
Okay.
That's an important part of his life. That's why he belongs to this group, right? So, what else?
I'm trying to think of it more in a general way, because of that really sums about everything.
What about survivors?
Well, how about lack of survivors?
Mm-hmm.
The family of those that were killed in the crash?
Yeah.
So families of survivors.
Or victims, families of victims, yeah,
Deceased.
deceased.
Do you think anybody in that community has PTSD?
Yes.
So that could be part of your community too, right? So PTSD, maybe mental health.
Mhm.
So now you can see how your community is also tied into this. So when you think about who you're writing for and who is this going to impact, that's part of your community. So we've got your story, we've got your brand, Truth, Justice, and the American Way, and you've got your community. This is who
Mhm.
you're really writing it for. This is your audience, okay? Now, let's talk about your cause. How is this article going to tie into driving awareness, correcting a wrong, creating a movement? What is really your cause? What's the end game? Why do you want to do this?
All three of those.
Okay.
It's funny how you.
And what's the topic that we're specifically talking about?
TWA 800 crash.
Is that a business?
No, that's an airplane.
Oh, so TWA crash?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the topic there, but we're talking about, what did I say, PTSD, awareness. probably trauma, healing, all those kinds of things, right?
Yep.
Is conspiracy a part of this?
Yep.
Yeah. I know, I think I know what you're talking about. I think I know that story.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. So now you can see you've got your story. These are all the things you're going to talk about because these are all important topics that you want to talk about. You've got your brand, okay? You've got your community. This is who you're writing for, and here's your cause. This is why. This is the why behind, because otherwise, literally, who cares, right?
Mhm.
Well, it's important that you do bring the truth out about the situation so that you can drive awareness and really create a movement, which is probably going to, the movement is actually probably changes in government so these kinds of things don't happen, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So government policy.
And there's one more that, James Saunders, who was a journalist, was, given a jail sentence because he brought out the TWA 800 inadequacies. And he lost his First Amendment rights.
So you've actually even got another one, and I'm gonna put this over here under your story. I'm gonna put whistleblowers.
Okay.
Ooh, there you go.
Because I'll tell you what, whistleblowers, they are coming out of the woodwork, if you haven't noticed. And
Not enough whistles.
there's not enough whistles. Seriously, and a lot of them are being unfairly imprisoned, treated poorly. I mean, the media has, tainted their good name. There's so many things that are happening, and we're seeing this is coming out every day. There was another story about a whistleblower who's being traumatized and being told they're crazy and everything else. And so these kinds of stories, they do need to come out. The truth does need to be told because so much of this focuses on our veterans, our active duty military, our current government policies, money, corruption, you name it. So I really like this. It's great that we used your article as a topic here. So you can see now how this all ties together. Now, doesn't this make it very, very clear? So and Dante, I'm gonna let you take this home with you. So
Okay, thank you.
I apologize for my
I noticed.
messy writing.
I noticed there's some parts of that aren't in my article.
Right. So now the wheels are turning and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I probably could actually take this list,
Yep.
the stuff that's in blue, I could even probably expand that further. Okay, that's gonna lead us into the sticky note method. But now you can see Dante has a roadmap. So what he's written so far, he can kind of go back and check these things off and say, have I covered this? Have I covered this? Do I give enough background about what my brand is so people understand why am I even talking about this, right? At the same time, what's the community? Are you writing for those people so that it's in a language that they're going to understand and it's going to resonate with them? And are you being true to your cause? And can you start a movement with this? Can you bring people to the forefront to come together to make sure that we do in this situation?
That's my rationale.
What was that?
That's my rationale for writing this piece.
Yep. So your cause, your rationale, that's your whole why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
So
it's-
that's the trifecta. If you use this method,
Mhm.
little triangle, your story, your brand, your community, and what's your cause, it's going to help you identify exactly what you need to be writing about. And you don't have to overthink it.
And that's what, it's really important to me because that's my question that I was going through. And to sum up my story, have I put in what needs to be put in to get people's attention?
Yeah.
That's very, very helpful.
Attention, what?
Right?
Attention, yes.
Okay, this is awesome. Okay, any questions on this so far? Okay, we're gonna move to the next step.
You mind if I move?
You have to push that in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dropped it once. It wasn't a real mic drop.
Fake mic
The
drop.
last person that didn't push it in hard broke a foot. No, I'm just kidding.
Whoa.
We don't want that. We don't want that. Okay, so I'm
He
gonna
fell
take this
over
off.
his TV.
I'll give this to you at the end. I wanna leave this up though so everybody can see it and take a picture of this. You can draw your own one if you want to. I'm gonna leave it there. Maybe we can get this to sit here.
That's a great idea.
Okay, so there's our step one. All right, now we're gonna move into the sticky note method. You're gonna love this.
Nope.
And why do I call it the sticky note method?
Because you're gonna use sticky notes.
Ta-da! Brought my own. So this is a really fun way of taking, after you've done your trifecta, okay? We've got all this fun stuff here. It's a really great way of breaking it down even further. And the reason, again, that you want to do this is because typically when we're writing, this is just the way we learned, you know, in school especially, is, oh, write your outline and A, B, and C and do these things in this order. But the problem is that when you get into linear thinking, it sometimes can hinder your creativity and kind of keep you from being creative. And you're really writing from a head space instead of writing from a heart space. Now, this particular article of Dante's is a great example because he can write about all the, you know, ins and outs of what he's talking about, the statistics, the facts, those kinds of things, the proof. But if he doesn't emotionally connect with his readers, his community, it's like just having a term paper, right? We want it to emotionally connect, because when you emotionally connect to the community, then your why becomes very obvious. So what we do here is we take sticky notes. And you can use any color, size, whatever. I just picked these up and I thought, ooh, purple sounds kind of fun. So I recommend that you do this on the back of a door that you can leave up, a blank wall that won't be disturbed, someplace where you can have these sticky notes and you don't have to pull them down or take them down every day. This is going to be your place marker, okay? My closest friend, it was her birthday yesterday, so happy birthday, Susie. She is a caregiver full-time for her mom, who has dementia. And she said, you know, I really want to write a book about what it's like to be a caregiver, but not the medical books that you see in the bookstores, not the boring, this is what to expect. She said, I really want to highlight the humorous side of what it's like caring for a family member this way. The things that are heartbreaking, the things that are fun, the things that make me laugh, and the stories that we tell over and over again. And so I said, okay, I trained her on the sticky note method, and she took a picture of all her sticky notes in the back of her office door and sent them to me. So it's kind of cool. I do get, many people will take photographs and send me the photographs of their sticky notes, and it's fun. So I'm just putting a bunch of sticky notes up here. And I want Dante to come back because I do want to use his as an example. I think we can start it for him though, because now we all have enough information. So find a space that's not going to be disturbed that you can put this up, because this is going to be now, in addition to your trifecta, we're going to take these things and break them down even further. So this gives you the structure to do the writing, okay? So let's look at, okay, we've got conspiracy. I think the other one was truth. Can you guys read those and just shout them out to me?
Power.
Power. Okay.
Citizenship. Whistleblower.
I think I have some.
Oh, those ones down there. Honor.
Mhm.
Government. Undercover. And my favorite word on the piece of paper, hoodwinked.
That's a good one.
Hoodwinked. solid word.
And let's also put on there, for example, government policy. We've got government on here. Yes, we do. Okay, what's another one? Oh, PTSD. Trauma. Mental health. Okay. Any others we need to add on there? Stuff that you can see there's going to be some crossover because you want to be able to talk about all these things, but this helps identify survivors. And I'm going to put family on here too. Okay, we could do more, but this is a good start. So when you come to doing your trifecta, you're then going to create sticky notes that are based on all these things that are on your trifecta chart. And there can be crossover. There can be stuff that is under your story, but then also some things that are in your cause, maybe even with your brand or your community. So you create sticky notes for all of these. My best practice advice is when you are going to do your writing, that you schedule a time that your brain is firing on all cylinders. For many people that's morning, because as we go throughout our day, we're inundated with television and news and conversations and phone calls and whatever is going on in our lives. In the morning, your brain is kind of open, okay? Your mind is open, your creative juices are flowing. So set aside your time to do your writing, whether it's 15, 30 minutes. Like Frank, he probably sits down and writes for 2 hours straight without even thinking of it.
I'll tell you about my storyboards.
Oh, I love storyboards. Yeah, I've actually just started working on a children's book that we have storyboards on, and it's fantastic. So this is kind of like that, okay? So this is very similar to this whole theory, or this whole method is very much like storyboarding, because it's a way to get you out of your head space, linear thinking, and get you into a heart space, which is your emotional, how do you connect with people? Like, that's what's gonna change if you use this, because it's gonna shift the way you think about it. So when you come to your writing space, on day one, say you're looking at this thing, I'm not sure what to write about. And there might be 1 or 2 or 3 that are hard to write about. And you're like, oh, those are gonna be tough topics to write about. So don't put yourself into a position where you force yourself to write about it. But you might be like, you know what? I'm gonna talk about being hoodwinked. That's the first one I'm gonna write about. So you take hoodwink and you spend your 15, 30 minutes, whatever, writing about that. You put it off to the side and you go on about your day. You don't think about it. You let it go. It's now written down. You can walk away from it. The next day when you come back, you're gonna look, and to me, it's always about what jumps off the page at you, or the wall, or your door, or wherever it's gonna be. What jumps out at you that says, oh my gosh, I have to write about that today. What the next day might be, ooh, we're gonna write about conspiracy. So you write about that and you just throw it to the other side. You don't throw these away. When you get to the point where you pretty much are working through all your sticky notes, they don't have to be in any order. Then you can come back and then you can say, okay, now that I know what I've written about on all these sticky notes, how does it all make sense? How do we put it back together? This is what I call reverse engineering your book. Instead of using an outline that goes from A to Z, or 1 to 20, or whatever it's gonna look like, this is saying, write the bits and pieces, write the stories that go along with these topics. Write that first, and then come back and say, okay, now I know the order they're gonna go in. They're gonna go in this order here, and then you're gonna put these all in some type of order that makes sense. Okay, uh-oh. Got
That doesn't make sense.
flying sticky notes. Flying sticky notes. And then you can rearrange these based on, because you know what you've written about, right? So then you can rearrange your manuscript or article, whatever you're writing, into a format that's gonna make sense and have good flow. This is a great way to get your your manuscript ready for that first round of editing, your first draft editing, because it's gonna be in a better position than you writing from what happened first, second, and third. Does that make sense? Okay. So the cool thing about this is when you do this, it changes what happens in your brain. So there's psychology behind this. I am not a psychologist, but I know what works, and I know the way people's brains work.
That microphone was doing that all day, I don't know why.
And it's probably because I'm turning that direction. So again, you're getting out of your linear brain and you're getting into a heart-centered space to write, okay? But when you do this and you get off your computer screen and you have something physical to look at and sticky notes to play with and markers and things like that, it changes the way your brain works. It's like kids. When you give kids a coloring book, they immediately come up with their own stories and fantasies and characters, right? It's the same thing. We're just shifting out of the way our brain works, and we're shifting into this, because this is going to help you get more creative. Okay? So that's the sticky note method, because then you're going to put this in an order, rearrange your manuscript, read through it again, say, okay, does that work? Is the flow there? Is it making sense for the reader? And then you can always go back and move things around, change it, send it to your editor, and then don't even write your table of contents until you're all done. Does that help? Okay. So what questions do you guys have about this?
I've got 3 versions of that story.
Okay.
One is photo version, one is short, just text version, and one includes the Clintons. And I'm thinking about that maybe 6 months before the general election. So how does the sticky method work with different versions?
My gut reaction when you say that is do the long version and include all of it,
Okay.
and then excerpt out pieces that can make the smaller chunks,
Oh, all right.
okay?
Yeah.
I think that's actually gonna be easier, because otherwise you're gonna keep coming back to these different pieces and parts and saying, how do I fit them in? Do the big thing first, and then you can pull chapters, excerpts, certain stories out of that, and then focus on that. I think that's gonna make it easier for you,
All right.
because then you're not gonna feel like you're leaving something out.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the story that it's not really even a story, it's just a collection of stories, but like told from the perspective of low-ranking people throughout history and like battles. So each chapter is technically its own independent story. So would you do one of those for each independent story, or would you do one for the whole? Would there be like an overarching theme that connects them? I don't know.
I would do this first. Do your trifecta, so that you have this, again, this is your roadmap. Do this, and then write each one of those stories. And do a sticky note for the stories. So for example,
Okay.
what's one of them?
Well, so the first one I have is a battle marathon in Greece,
Okay,
and yeah.
so you have a sticky note for Battle Marathon. Then you have one for Civil War. Then you
Yeah.
have one for whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually do have a list of all the battles that I'm gonna throughout
That's perfect.
history. Yeah.
Put those on your sticky notes,
Okay.
and then write about those, and just put them to the side, and then come back and look at it and say, okay, do I need to envision this now that I know what I've written? Do I do it by country? Do I do it by era? It'll start to become clear on how to organize that.
I was thinking just like chronological, from ancient times to modern.
You could do it that way too. But it also may make sense. You might see a very clear division where you say, okay, these right here are all part of Europe. And then you might have a bunch over here. You're like, well, these are all US. And then these over here are, whatever, Russia or, wherever it might be. So then you might say, okay, so within these different geographical areas, we now have a timeline. So then what you can do is you could actually take your book and have it in 3 sections based on where they are geographically, and then the timeline within that section.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
But you're not gonna know that
Uh-huh.
really until you write all the stories,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you use both of these together, they're not mutually exclusive?
Right? So, and because this is really your roadmap, this is your broad overview. So, because you wanna make sure that you're connecting all the dots here, and a lot of people have already done the writing piece, but they're like, I know I'm missing stuff, and where does that piece fit in? If you do this and come back to your sticky notes, and then put the sticky notes to the side that you've already written, because you've already done that piece, but then you're gonna be able to come back and then formulate the plan.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Frank?
I brought my writing boards, I use boards that are 3 feet by 5 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And I use stacks of 3 by 5 cards that cut in half, there's your stick.
Yeah.
And I pin them in.
I love it.
But my first board, I'll lay out the entire book. I get my plot, here's my plot. And I'll say things, boyfriend, just be up, meaning boyfriend does this, gee, girlfriend does that, no name, no nothing, this is just my plot. Then on my next board, I start breaking it down by chapter. And I have, how many chapters is gonna be, 20, 30 chapters, whatever it is, and they run. And as I break them down by chapters, I'm getting more and more, chapter 1 in a board might run 4 or 5 lines across a 5-foot board.
Right.
I'm getting as much information in as I possibly can. So, I understand what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
Very much.
And I think it's important for people, obviously Frank's been doing this a while. He's figured out the method that works for him, and that's so important. This is just a tool for those of you that don't have a method yet, because this can help you get there. But once you've written as many books as Frank has, you're gonna have that so dialed in that you literally, he could, and the storyboarding is great too, because I don't know about you guys, but when I get an idea and I feel inspired and I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, this would be great, I need to put it somewhere. Sometimes I text it to myself on my phone. This is the great thing about storyboards, sticky notes, however you're going to do it, you have something to come back to and add to and move around, and it's like having a game board that you can use to actually get your writing done. If you try and keep it all in your head, or you've got it in a notebook somewhere, it's gonna make it more difficult to actually get the writing part done.
If I can add one other thing.
Yeah.
On my boards, I run a line across, I leave a lot of space for my next line, because then I can come back and tape underneath, and I'll have one little thought, and they have 4 or 5 things, my little thought might be this long on the board.
Yeah,
So you need to leave yourself plenty of room for fill-in, if you will.
absolutely.
Call it.
Yeah. I've seen people's sticky notes that start out like this, and then they literally cover the back of the door, or they cover a wall, and people will do, they'll start being like, okay, now my mind is working, so I'm gonna actually take some of these out and replace them with a different color, because now I'm color coding it. Now I've got, even other little markers or, notes and things like that. So just kind of do what works for you, but this is the basics for getting out of your head, getting into your heart, and especially if you're stuck, doing this process will really help you.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
One of the important things, very important things, especially if you're writing a novel, is it'll keep you on track. And I've told this group a number of times about The Godfather. If you read the book, you'll see where the author loses track of his plot. And he goes on and on and on for over 100 pages about nonsense in Vegas.
Yeah.
That has nothing whatsoever to do with the plot. Not even later does it have anything to do with the plot. Just lost track of it.
And that's a really good point too, because then when screenwriters go to take a book and do an adaptation and create a screenplay, you're like, that whole chunk goes bye-bye.
That's what it did.
You can have one sentence, one word, one line that's a nod to those 100 pages about Vegas and not have to even create a scene for it.
Well,
So,
maybe it's
yeah.
probably killing your babies.
What was that?
Killing your babies.
Oh.
You have something that you wrote that you really love and it doesn't fit into anything. So you have to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's hard. Killing your babies.
Yes.
The answer to that really I found is, okay, why did I write that? I write it because I liked it. Well, does it fit? Well, no, but I liked it.
Yeah. That's one of those that you take and you copy and you paste it onto
Right,
the,
yeah.
is not getting published, you know, like everybody has like, it's like a junk file where you've got like the excerpts, you're like, it's such good writing and I want to keep it, but it doesn't belong here, right? It doesn't belong here. So yeah, always make sure that you've got stuff that is like your trash pile, you know, but keep those because sometimes those rear their ugly heads and they come back and they end up in your next project, your next book, the next thing that you want to publish. Or even just in an article, like if you're writing an article, it's sometimes those are the ones that come up.
When I was writing a spec script first, Seinfeld, I had something like that. I just said, take it out. But by the time I got finished, they canceled the series. But towards the end of the series, they'll take unionized scripts because they're kind of run out of ideas.
Yeah.
So I thought
And,
it might be able to fit in there.
Especially when, you know, script writers, it happens all the time in television, they get to the end of their contract and then they decide, okay, I've 10 seasons, I've done my time, I want to move on, do something different. They have a better offer, who knows, right? So they know it's towards the end of that person's contract. They're like, we don't have anybody, we don't have any fresh ideas. And some of it just seems repetitive, so yeah, they'll take solicitations, yeah.
So Dante, you're the one that killed Seinfeld?
Good
Yeah.
job.
Don't
That's on my resume.
It means you killed Kramer too.
Actually, Kramer was a major thing. He and his mother, Babs, Kramer's mother.
Spoilers. I'm just kidding.
Right.
So I turned it into a short story, and I put it on our website.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that Kramer? I saw
Yeah.
that, okay.
You know, the other thing you can do too is you can, you know, I always caution with beta readers because beta readers, unless they're like a career beta reader, a lot of times they're just people that like to read and they aren't necessarily understanding how the industry works. So, but you can always take, for example, one of your chapters, one of your topics, or whatever you wrote it from that inspired place.
Yeah.
You can always share that and just say, feedback please, and just
Yep.
see what people say. But just be careful not to share too much because then, you know, you're giving it away for free.
I'm gonna publish it.
Yeah. Okay, how are we on time?
We're doing good. We got time for questions.
Okay, let's do questions, and it can be about anything, whether it's trifecta, sticky note method, it can be anything related to publishing, writing, any of that stuff.
So what are the publishers looking for now?
So I'm assuming you're talking about traditional publishing, yes? Okay.
Or, you know, not mostly, but then other areas of publishing that
So-
we might be able to fit into.
Right. So there are different types of publishing. There's traditional publishing, which is going after, for example, Random House, Penguin, any of the big names, the big five, right? It is virtually impossible to get picked up by them unless you're somebody like Frank who has 22 books that he's written and he's known and he's a proven writer, like he's a legit author, right? So he, well, Frank would have no problem getting picked up by a traditional publisher if he wanted to go that direction. The thing is though, chances are what he writes, it's still gonna get edited and he may not have a say in that with traditional publishing. It's also gonna take about 3 years to get published, okay? So, because we're not all like Frank, and many of us have published 0 to maybe 2 or 3 books, right? Chances are you're not big enough to get picked up by a traditional publisher. So that's where hybrid and independent publishing come into play. So hybrid is where, for example, a great one here in the San Diego area, I'm gonna give a shout out to Acorn Publishing. Holly and Jessica are phenomenal. They do a great job. They do work on both fiction and nonfiction. Their covers are fantastic. I actually do their bestseller campaigns for them, so I've partnered with them on that. So hybrid is where someone will come and they'll do all the work on it, and they publish it under their imprint, Acorn Publishing, but yet the author still keeps all the rights and royalties.
Do they do all the distribution? And,
They'll put you on print on demand, so Ingram Spark,
okay.
Amazon, like all of that. So, of course, the authors always can still be responsible for doing their own marketing, because that's really how you let people know about it. But that's part of why they have me do the bestseller campaign, to get the book positioned correctly and get good rankings. So that's hybrid publishing.
Okay.
And then there's the small independent presses are kind of few and far between these days. A lot of them have gone out of business just because of pandemic and just the way the world works now. So a lot of them are either being picked up by traditional publishers, or they're joining forces with hybrids. There's a lot of things happening, but you don't see too many small independent presses anymore. And so then the last way to publish is really true independent publishing, which is what I coach authors on. Is I'm going to help you I'm going to help you put together your own imprint, your own publishing name, your own publishing company, so that you publish, you have all the rights and royalties, and basically I just help you navigate it and get it set up correctly. When I work with authors, I'll take them all the way through this process, which is part of my book visioning, into getting them going on the writing, and then finding editors to work with them, and then cover design, setting up their accounts, launching the book, doing a bestseller campaign. So I kind of take a high-level approach and follow the entire project from start to finish, and the guide for the author.
Does that?
So-
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Does that include printing and binding too? Or is that?
So when you're using print on demand, they do the printing and binding for
okay.
you,
Okay.
which is phenomenal, because then you don't have to purchase 15,000 books and have them in your garage.
Yeah.
So print on demand, this is why it's become so incredibly popular. Because literally you put your book on Ingram or on KDP, which is Amazon's print on demand service, and somebody buys a book, they print it, they ship it, you get the royalty.
Yeah.
It's that easy.
I remember one time I bought a book from Amazon. I was like, this thing was published last week. Oh no, wait, it was just printed last week because I bought it.
Exactly, yeah. But also helping people understand, where do you need help? Do you need help with marketing? Do you need help with, do you need a cover designer? If you've got great editors, fantastic, but let's make sure that you have all the pieces dialed in, so, yeah.
What about our short story writers? How do we get into an anthology, or can you help us with that?
Yeah. So anthologies, in fact, my 2 books that are out are anthologies. They are groups of people that I work with. I did a 6-month program called Behind the Scenes. And so we would pick a topic, they would each write a chapter, and then we published the anthology, which was super. You can put out feelers and just kind of look around and see who's doing anthologies.
We're doing anthologies.
So yeah, I was gonna say, you guys are doing anthologies too, so is the women's group. So those are always good. And the nice thing about anthologies is that you don't have to do massive amounts of writing, right? You can write 1 chapter, call it good. Sometimes you can actually take a chapter that you've written in a previous anthology, you can rewrite it and send it in for the next one. So those are really nice.
I was on staff for the SCCA regional newsletter, and I did a lot of writing for auto racing, and so I got a lot of stories in that too that I'd like to have published.
Yeah, you could put those in a book format and
Yeah.
stick it up on Amazon. Absolutely, yeah.
Like comment about Amazon, if you go with Amazon, be very careful, they take an enormous chunk
Yeah.
of the sale.
Yeah, you only get 60%.
Yeah.
That much?
Yeah, 60% to the
That's
author.
what-
That much, he says.
I mean, they do all the work,
Yeah.
you know? I
All
mean, we just
the
write it,
publishers do all
but they
the
do
work.
all the other
Yeah,
work.
writers do the work,
Yeah.
they just,
If you have a book and you want numbers run on, for example, the print cost for your book and royalties, you can go on and use the KDP calculator and it'll tell you all of that. So you'll know how much you make, which the lowest price that you can sell your book at, what your royalty is going to be, and your print cost and all that. So, yeah, KDP calculator is a great one.
I was
Now,
thinking about
just
30%.
no, you make 60%. So,
That's
and if on an
confusing.
ebook, you make 70% on an ebook.
I was just always thought it'd be cool to have like an old timey binding for the history book.
Yeah, but there's ways around that. In fact, what I would recommend is that you use Ingram Spark, which when you publish on Ingram Spark, it still feeds over to Amazon,
Okay.
okay? But you have more options with your covers, and especially if you're doing color, interior, those kinds of things, it's cheaper on Ingram Spark to do color. You can do hardcover on Amazon, but I don't think their quality is as good.
Mhm.
Ingram Spark is better quality. I did a book, it was actually a family legacy history book about one side of the family, the other side of the family, and then the combined. So he had 3 volumes. And we did the treatment on the book so that it actually looked like it was leather bound, even though it was
Well, I see.
basically a laminate,
Yeah.
right? So it was kind of cool because it looked like it was old timey, but it wasn't. And by doing that, kept down costs tremendously, because if you go to an offset printer, you're gonna pay top dollar to have books printed. Yeah, it just kind of is what it is, but there's ways around it for sure.
Legally, is it okay for us to use public domain works and just give credit to the author? or-
Yeah, you can do it. In fact, you should just Google, how do I use public domain? And it'll tell you the steps on how to do that. When you're loading your files onto KDP, there is a little box that you will click that says this is public domain work.
Okay.
Talking about images or something?
No, I'm talking about taking out pieces of stories
Oh,
and
yeah.
integrating them into
Right.
what I'm writing.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, citation.
And sometimes,
About citations too, that's another good.
yeah, and sometimes it's better if you actually just quote the public domains,
Mhm.
source, and then put who it's from, depending on how long it is and that kind of thing. So the other thing too is if you're ever looking at something where you feel like you aren't sure if you have permission to use it, I have a great colleague that is a permissions editor. That's all she does, is go after permissions. I did a book for a woman who it was basically her personal writings, but also her favorite quotes, poems, things like that. And so in order to use that, we had to go back to the authors and ask for permission on specific work. And so we used a permissions editor, which was fantastic. And sometimes the original author may charge you a little bit to use that work and republish it. Sometimes they'll say, no, go ahead and do it, just send me a free copy of the book. It depends on what the arrangement is. But if you ever need a permissions editor, I've got a great contact.
Do you ever hear of review of the literature and scientific work, where you go through different literatures of the topic that you're working on? And I've worked on a paper like that.
Yeah.
It's there's not a lot of original work, but you're just putting everything together.
Exactly, yeah. But it depends on how you're gonna use it. You have to have a lot of citations in that. So
Yeah,
you still are gonna want a
yeah.
permissions editor to make sure that those citations are correct and accurate and all that other stuff.
Because I've got a lot of citations in one of my works.
Yeah.
Every time I wrote, there was a citation. I don't know if I want to put it in the work or in like a bibliography.
That's a really good point, actually, and it depends on the type of book. If it is like a technical or a reference book,
Yeah.
then you want to go ahead and put it in the body of the work.
Okay.
It means that when you're formatting or interior layouts being done, it's going to be kind of a nightmare. It's going to cost more. If it is like you're doing historical fiction, but you might be having sourcing or citing sources. my recommendation is don't interrupt the flow of the work. Put them in a resources, bibliography, appendix, however you want to, at the back of the book so people can reference it, and you've done the due diligence on that. But don't interrupt the flow of the book. That's my recommendation. But if it is a reference or a technical book, you definitely want it in the body of that. Yeah.
What about for images? Like an old picture of a Greek helmet or something like that.
Yeah.
So like, what if I took the picture versus I find a picture on the internet?
Yeah, and you can find stock images too. It costs a little bit, a couple bucks to get some of those stock images. But if you took the picture, then it's yours.
But it was at like a museum. Do I have to cite the museum where I took the picture?
I would be safe.
Okay.
So I would say photo courtesy of, and then say at the whatever museum.
Okay.
When I was doing video, we did a lot of stock footage. There's houses that has all different kinds of footages of things that I had some Hawaii footage that I dropped from a stock house and looked really good.
Yeah.
Better than I could have done.
Yeah. So all those things, you just want to make sure that you're giving credit where credit is due. You're better to be safe than sorry. Also, be sure that your books, since you're registering them, we can do the pre-catalog and publication number with the Library of Congress. You can do that, and you don't actually have to, I mean, you can also go to the copyright.gov and copyright it. Make sure that you have a good copyright page. Do your Library of Congress. Make sure to send them a book after your book's published. There's all these little things too that really make your book stand out and look a lot more professional than just, putting all rights reserved on a page. So.
On our citations, do we have to put the page it's actually on, or the citation that you're using?
Again, it depends on the type of book. Like you can say resources in the back and just list your stuff. You can put page numbers on there. That's going to be more like a bibliography.
Yeah.
Or like end notes, like if you're
End
doing Chicago
notes.
style.
Yeah. I even have people who will put in recommended reading. I work with a lot of people that are in the spiritual health and wellness arena, and so a lot of them will put even recommended healers.
Oh.
Like there's all kinds of different things like that. So Frank, you had something?
Yes, I would comment back about Library of Congress and whatnot. My big investigative book, which is 1,200 pages, weighs 6 pounds, 3 ounces.
Yeah.
I was at a convention of investigators, and a woman came in. She was a teacher, and she looked at my overleaf page that showed my Library of Congress number. She went to every book in that convention.
Really?
She came back with her husband and said, "Buy this book. It is the only one
Wow.
in the Library of Congress
Wow.
out of all these books at the convention." It's
Yeah.
extremely important. If you get your book in the Library of Congress, it truly is.
Yeah.
It's actually a buddy of ours, Tim and I, is an English major, and he's like super excited about coming and helping us sometime.
Mhm.
But the thing that really caught his attention is the fact that our book's in the Library of Congress. He's like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
is that good?
And it's easy, you guys. You go on, they give you I think it's like 8 or 9 digit number.
Yes, it is.
You put it on your copyright page, and
Yeah.
then when your book is published, you send them your best copy.
Oh,
That's all you have to do.
Oh.
It's that simple.
I see it.
And
just wanna make sure.
Yes, Gary?
Yeah, Susie, is it fair to say that your publishing company could take from the point in time that somebody finishes the book up through publishing, you could help do the whole thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like if we're lazy.
And
Yeah.
so if anybody has a book and they wanna connect with you, they can use that website that I use.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and
I will send out all that stuff that we originally sent out.
exactly.
to them.
You guys all have my cards. It has my website on there.
Oh, that's
And
why
there's
you
a
asked
little
project
button.
management.
What was that?
I was like, that's why you asked about technical project management. Because your title is project management for all.
Well, I know, this is, yeah, well,
Yeah.
also just like, what do you mean by technical?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
It's a big world out there, right?
Yeah, it is.
So, there's a little button on my website, it says book, schedule a consultation, click on that, it takes you to my calendar, you schedule a 30-minute consultation, those are free, always free. There's also another part of my business, which is Movie Muse Productions, where I write and edit screenplays. So if you have someone who, and we love doing book adaptations, it's really kind of fun. So I work with Tommy Anderson on that. And then I'm also part of, and I haven't put this on my business cards yet because I still had a box to get through before we launched this. So I'm one of the founding partners of Rogue Publishing Partners.
That sounds like a great name.
RoguePublishingPartners.com. Yeah, check out the website, it's fantastic. We created this platform specifically for nonfiction authors because we found that there wasn't one place where people who were, you know, executives, CEOs, coaches, consultants, or even people with veterans, it doesn't matter. If you're writing nonfiction, excuse me, and you need services, we were like, people have to go all over the place to find stuff, and then they gotta look at, well, do they do fiction? So we said, let's create a platform that drives people here and then lists everybody and what they offer. If they do cover design, if they do editing, if they do audio books, business sources, and so we set that up. And so we have specific packages, like an editorial package, a design package, business services. So we have all these different services, and we're also linked to the Strategic Advisory Board. So it was a great connection for us. We launched this in January of this year, and it's really wonderful to see all these publishing experts come together and offer their services. And you know, we were already doing referrals to each other, so it just made a lot of sense, and we're getting a really good response for that platform. So, yeah. All right, Gary, what's our time?
Well, got one more thing.
Uh-oh, here comes.
Okay, and I should just mention too, when you guys get the guidebook from Gary, that's going to be a whole bunch of information that we didn't really even touch on today. So it's a lot of other tips and stuff like that. And so read through that. It's probably going to give you a whole nother slew of questions.
So you'll get this PDF document, and you'll also get all the introductory information that was sent originally about Susie, in case you want to contact her. We want you to have one of our.
I love it. Thank you.
And if you would wear it once in a while and help advertise us.
Okay, so here we go.
We were just
And it's,
wondering.
okay, it's my favorite. It's long sleeves. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, guys. This is so awesome. Let me put that down. Oh gosh, sorry for those of your ears.
1, 2, 3. Gary Blunk. 1, 2, 3. I'm just kidding. I just wanted to give you an extra one.
Okay, so when I go back to my bestie's house, we're gonna actually go, and I've got a wine pickup at LaFleur's. And we're gonna grab some wine and have barbecue. Guess what I'm wearing?
Nice.
Guess what I'm wearing?
All right, well, thank you, Susie.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we will post this video.
Yep.
And the PDF file, and